sorry, go ahead. Are you using technology for that? Do you have some very operational plans for that to speed up?
During the pandemic, we engaged in partnerships with some global tech giants who had the capacity to help us with that. So we partnered with Google, with Amazon, with Cisco, with Coursera, with a number of outfits that were able to provide us with scalable programs for training the unemployed. But that's not a permanent solution because those partnerships were done during the pandemic under emergency measures. They provided them under their corporate social responsibility actions, and they were more, let's just say, temporary gifts, if I can use that term, to the Greek past because of the pandemic. The problem we have in Greece, and I think a lot of us are facing, is that a lot of the people who need training are not computer literate, and many of them actually lack basic digital skills. So simply saying, oh, I'm going to invest in e-learning is not a solution for a lot of people who are simply not comfortable with online environments and lack basic digital literacy skills. So I think that using e-learning is definitely part of the solution. That goes without saying, and I think globally that's already happening. But at the same time, we need to be careful that some of the people, many people who need this help the most, are actually unable to use e-learning. That's where we have to go with more hybrid models that combine both in-person and online environments. That includes training in person, which is a challenge during COVID with the restrictions in terms of in-person training and the number of people who can participate in classes. But the answer is all of the above. There is no magic bullet. There is no silver bullet. There is no magic solution to this. We need to utilize all the tools, and we need to be very, very careful in making sure that what people are being taught is what the economy actually needs. One of the things that we're struggling with right now is that we need to find a way to do quick assessments of the skills gaps that individuals have. So to ensure that the training that they get is actually the training that they need and the training that they can benefit from. And another major parameter in this conversation needs to be quality. Greece has struggled, and I know speaking to some of my colleagues in other European countries, this is not just a Greek phenomenon. But many times we say, oh, okay, let's do some upskilling and reskilling. Okay, well, if it's not good, then it's wasted money, really. And we have seen significant investments in training in the past, and Greece is dead last in Europe when it comes to skills matching. And as OECD and others have pointed out, we lag significantly many of our European peers in terms of the skill level that Greek workers have. So I would say the combination of using all of the available tools, focusing on quality and accountability, making sure that we invest in scalable tools and instruments, and looking for results and demanding results from the providers, I think are the key elements for us to be able to respond to the rapidly and ever-changing needs of the economy. I keep hearing this over and over from employers. Why can't I find the workers that I need with such a high unemployment rate? Why is it so difficult from low-skilled jobs, medium-skilled jobs, not necessarily just IT and highly skilled professionals, but even low and middle-skilled professionals? They are facing difficulty finding people, and our job as a public employment service is to try to fill that gap and tackle this challenge. And we need to work very closely, of course, with the Department of Education, the department that I belong to, which is the Department of Labor, and the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Education, and the certification agency. This is a big gap in Europe, and it's something that I've come across recently and I've struggled with, which is that there is no common unifying certification scheme. Who certifies? Who is a certified certifier? In other words, who can I rely on to actually do the certification and for me to know that's valid and that's what the market needs? I think that a European conversation around certification is urgently needed to make sure that we have a common framework. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we're going to have a patchwork of certification schemes that's not going to be translatable, it's not going to be portable, it's not going to be recognizable across countries, and that's going to have significant effects on mobility within the single European labor market. But it's also going to create confusion, overlapping bureaucracies, and just add more layers to the already problematic systems that we face. Nevertheless, I don't want to be pessimistic. I'm optimistic as a person. I think that there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of focus by policymakers at the highest levels on these issues around skills. And the European Commission has definitely helped in that regard by making skills a central part of both the recovery and resilience facility, but also the ease plan that they had announced as we were getting ready to get out of the pandemic. And generally, it's very helpful to people like me who work on the ground with the Public Employment Service that the European Commission has put skills at the forefront of the agenda for the next day. And so digital and green skills is what we're going to be focusing on. And the parameters that I discussed are going to be the keys to making sure that it's successful. I hope I didn't go over my time.
You are muted.
Unmute yourself, Margarida.
Thank you for your very surgical highlights. We'll come back to you afterwards also to talk about skills and this CVET and upskilling and reskilling. But something that you told, a lot of things that you told rings European bells, of course. And I'm asking Loukas Zahilas because he's also a fighter for the last years. And each time we are changing, and this time we are not only changing, I think in Europe we are doing transformations, including in skill and in our learning programs, the way we are focused on learning. But Loukas is an old fighter, like me. We are not so old, we are quite young. But however, we are fighting for causes, things long time ago, as well as Joao. Joao, you are on the same on the same basket. So, and something that I heard, it reminds me this old roots, new roots, the importance of international certification, the importance now, the micro credentials, how to enhance actual this learning, going speed up, and put us focus more on upskilling and reskilling in a very quick way, rapid way, but effective and kind of recognized. Loukas, do you want to share some of your insights besides of the very nice words that you already shared with us this morning?
Thank you, Margarita. Yes, we belong to the dinosaurs of VET, I suppose. We have been so many years. And actually, this is an opportunity to share with you exactly what you said, because I have been working many years in VET, initially at national level, then at European level. And the main issue was always how to make theory become practice and how this European cooperation can give concrete examples and practices. And I think, although we can say it is a slow train, it gives results. That means we started cooperating more or less 20 years ago. And now we have actually started a new cycle of cooperation with a horizon of 2025. But it seems that everything around us that is changing so fast also presses European cooperation, but also at national level, in a way that will definitely will lead to changes that will be visible in the next few years. And I think we had during these 20 years, I could say, of developments, one financial crisis and now the COVID-19 crisis, that were also, apart from crisis, opportunities to develop specific areas because there was no other option. So digitalization became one of the priorities, and this helped a lot. Now, if we move to what we are planning and what are we are doing, it is obvious that in the near future, what we need is to upgrade skills, to upskill and reskill not only those that have low qualifications or are outside the work, but everybody that works, perhaps in all sectors, I could say. One of the CEDEFOP studies showed that even before the crisis, 45% of the adult population in the European Union 27 plus had low or outdated skills, and potentially they needed upskilling or reskilling. So 1 out of 2, let's say, of people working needed this type of retraining or enhancing their level of skills and competencies. And it was obvious also that the systems were not in a position just alone to deliver all this type of training. That is why we try to promote all types of working together with employers, with the private sector, in order to give the possibility to work with us and perhaps provide more this type of reskilling to employers in a more efficient way. What I can say, and I think this will be one of the issues that will be dominant, I could say, in the new training landscape, will be that we will have a more complex and unpredictable working life, and this calls for more learner-centered provision. That means the focus should be to the learner, and we have to respond to the individual needs to support everybody whenever he or she can participate to this type of training, and of course taking into account what employers require. And this, so we say this in a more, let's say, theoretical way. We say that learner-centered VET should be age open and age neutral. That means it should be for everybody, regardless the age he or she intends to enter this area. Preparing these young but also older adults mainly to face the modern challenges, I think we come to the need for faster and perhaps smaller, let's say, provision of knowledge and skills and competencies. And this brings us to what you mentioned before, and Chiara also mentioned in the beginning, Chiara Liondino, about the micro-credentials. Micro-credentials is an area where we have invested a lot recently in CEDEFOP. We're working closely with the European Commission, and we have an advisory group where we also have the social partners. We believe that this will be a new promising area because it's a way to give visibility and value to shorter learning courses and experiences. And also, it has a dual role. In some cases, it can be a way to recognize learning outcomes acquired outside educational institutions. But in some other cases, you can use these micro-credentials to recognize smaller modules or units of formal education and training. So this is a very important function that they have, and it will be very important for the future developments. And also, this short learning course is actually a response to what I mentioned before. That means to more flexible, more learner-centered education and training. However, and that is why we do a lot of research in this area, we have to see if this shift we witness currently will be a permanent shift. In CEDEFOP, we are actually at the beginning of a big project on micro-credentials. The main idea of this project was initially to map the existing situation, what is happening in Europe in terms of micro-credentials. Then the second very important dimension is to see how these existing micro-credentials can link to existing qualification frameworks and systems, and how, which is the reaction between micro-credentials and formal systems. And the third very important dimension is to see how micro-credentials can be user-friendly and can become, let's say, relevant for the needs of all stakeholders. Because we believe visibility, value, and learner encouragement are main elements in this discussion. So I think it's an area, just to sum up what I said, European cooperation is there. We have this extreme pressure from outside to speed up, to become more practical. We are doing these efforts. We cannot work alone. That means we cannot sit in Brussels or somewhere else and decide what will happen everywhere. We have to include everybody in this effort. And I think we have to follow concrete good practices that exist all over Europe. And I think Joao already presented in his presentation elements of these good practices. So this is from my part, Margarida. Muted.
It's the new verb, mute or unmute, being muted. So, thank you, Loukas. Thank you for sharing this. I know it's not insight; it's concerning, and it's our goal for the next year to fight for that. I have some memories, but we'll come back later on that moment where we put together all the national qualifications and all the national authorities to put the upskilling and the importance of CVET on the table, and at that time said, no, it's not a subject for us. It was a long time ago, but now it's amazing. Everything is changing, and the micro-credentials and so on. So it's not only about our Europe, it's not about only our member states, and that's why we are in these associations, and that's why we have this open dialogue with you. It's also about Europe in the world. It's so about our internationalization, the mobilities, and so on. So working together, not only with our business partnerships, but also working together abroad, learning with others, and having these opportunities to receive and to transform and to have this kind of a symbiosis. So, Joao, you are always a dinosaur fighter, like Loukas was saying. Okay, a flying bird, not a dinosaur. And you were supposed to sing now. Okay. And Joao is also, he was mentioned several times today. Because he's not, can I say you are the father or something? When we create some babies, we transform dreams. And this is what you are doing at European Commission level and in our organizations daily. It's starting through dreams and then go after dreams, transform dreams in goals, then in targets, then in activities, and then trying to find some money. This is up to you, Joao. Sometimes we don't find it, but we just go ahead. Joao, can you share a little bit also your insights concerning what are the big challenges in this Europe on the internationalization level, but also on the cooperation between vet providers and this business cooperation, which is also one of the goal of your COVIS projects, which are not the projects, are a reality, our sons.
Thank you very much, Margarida, and good afternoon to everyone. First, congratulate EBBD for the event you organized, and it's always a pleasure to contribute to your events because we recognize at the European level the incredible work you've been doing for building better vet system throughout Europe. Before I go on to the theme you proposed, Margarida, on internationalization of vet and the way we see it in the future, I'd just like to build on what Spiros said before, because it's very interesting. I hear quite often, it's not only Spiros that said it, but quite often people complaining throughout Europe that companies say, there's so much unemployment, especially in countries like Greece and Italy and Spain. There's so much unemployment that we cannot find the people with the skills we need. This is a recurrent theme, and there's no easy solution to this. And I think the only real solution is when companies will understand that the skills provision is not only a problem of the education and training sector, but they have to be part of the solution. We will only manage it when companies don't sit back and expect the education and training system to be capable of responding to a rapid technological change, and they will be part of it. When they will be sitting together in stable partnerships with education and training providers, with the vet providers in particular, looking at future skill needs and telling them this is what we need. Because if we continue standing back and expecting the education system in an era of rapid technological change, in which the education system by itself is incapable of understanding exactly where we will go, I mean, the work that CEDEFOP is doing on anticipating future skill needs is crucial, is important. By itself, it will not solve it. We need on the ground at a local level that companies work with vet providers, they sit together, they look at how can we invest in skills together, how can you help me get the people I need, but from the beginning, help form these people, not sit back and expect the education system to do it. I mean, the public employment services obviously have a role to play in this, but I would say that the biggest transformation, that's what we're trying to do with the Pact of Skills and with the skills agenda to a certain extent, is make society understand that education and training is not a matter only for the education and training providers, but society in general has to be combining this. Regional development authorities, public employment services, we have to work together if we want to address this challenge. Otherwise, expecting that only one entity is capable of doing it will not solve the problem. But okay, going to what you invited me to talk about, which is the internationalization. No, we can go in every direction. But I'm happy to discuss it. I mean, some of the things I'm saying don't reflect the position of the Commission. It's a little bit, you invited me to be provocative, and I try to be so. But I'm happy to discuss it. Fine. But on internationalization, I think that, first of all, we have to understand that internationalization of vet is not only a treaty obligation, because if you look at the EU treaty, there's an article 166 that says very clearly that one of our obligations is to foster cooperation with third countries and with international organizations like the OECD and so on. Then we have the European education area, which was adopted last year, that has this one of the 6 dimensions, the geopolitical dimension, in which it calls for all of us throughout Europe, not only European institutions, to make sure that education is part of our vision of the world, the way that Europe interacts with the world. Of course, we're not here to save the world, but we want to share the good experiences we have, and we also want to learn from other countries from outside Europe. They are doing a fantastic job in vocational training. If you look at Canada, if you look at Australia, even China, they're transforming hundreds of universities into University of Applied Sciences. So you see excellent examples all over the world, and I think this geopolitical dimension that the European education area is talking about is precisely this. And then if we go look more into these kind of strategic frameworks, we have the Council recommendation on vet, was adopted last year. We were just celebrating 1 year of its adoption a few days ago, that asks for both the member states and the European Union to work on promoting vet in an international context. It even goes further. It sets a very ambitious target of 8% of learners getting involved in mobility abroad. This is a particular challenge now in the context of COVID, because when we started drafting the Council recommendation, I mean, COVID wasn't even in the back of our minds. Nobody had the idea that this would come up. And I mean, setting a target in a context pre-COVID of 8% and now having to deal with it is a tremendous challenge for all of us. And then you also have the Oslo Group Declaration that clearly says that we should promote VET in its international dimension, not in a selfish or arrogant way of thinking we have the solution for the world and everyone should copy the German or the Austrian model. Not at all. It's this idea of really, and I think it's the way that Europe sees itself in the world, of opening up to others, understanding, things, how people are addressing similar problems all over the world. How can we learn from them and how can we contribute to them? And so if you want this kind of political context, then it's translated, I would say, in three big areas. The first one is what we are doing, concretely in this. We have constant dialogues with Europe, ASEAN, Europe and the US, Europe and Canada. We have constant political dialogues that include the skill dimension, where that is quite often talked about. We have, communication campaigns, European vocational skills. If you look at it, they are participants from all over the world. It goes beyond Europe. It has to do with the core issue of that, which has to do with the attractiveness of that. The issue of attractiveness and low social esteem of that is not only a European problem, it's a problem all over the world, and we are working together on this. Skills competitions, another way in which we engage in terms of international cooperation, and of course with the traditional international organizations like the OECD, UNESCO, UNEVOC, ILO, and as well with VET providers and associations of VET providers all over the world, not only the Europeans. And I think EBBV is a good example because you have members also from outside Europe. But with the World Federation of Colleges and Polytechnic, with VETA and so on. So there's this kind of international dimension that I would say in the first pillar where we do this level of cooperation. Then there's what we do in terms of development aid. A lot of people don't know, but Europe is the biggest, the largest world donor for reforms in vocational training all over the world. In the previous programming period, we financed more than 700 million euros. 7 million, not 1,000 euros. Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Very good on promoting that, Joao.
But I was saying that we have tremendous investments all over the world to support the development of that in all corners of the world. And then the third element, which I think is extremely important, is the work that the European Training Foundation is doing with 29 partner countries. Jordan has already explained about it, so I'm not going to develop much. But I think the European Training Foundation is sort of our foreign office, I would say, in Europe, in terms of supporting reforms all over the world, in the 29 partner countries where they are working. So having said this, I think one of the important elements before I conclude what I wanted to tell you, Erasmus Plus is our main financing instrument for everything that has to do with European level support for internationalization. First of all, on mobility, of course, and there's important novelties in the area of that, because in the next programming period, we'll have funding to support mobility outside the Erasmus associated countries, which is a novelty. It was something that was a reality in higher education. We managed to push for it also to be a reality in VET, and for the first time, we'll have VET learners supported by Erasmus Plus going to any country in the world where the European VET providers think we can engage and learn from it. And then, of course, we have the amounts. If you look at the amounts, we've had, in fact, many people don't know this, but the first mobility program for learners in Europe was not in higher education. Erasmus started back in 1987. We'll be celebrating 35 years next year. But in fact, the first mobility programs in Europe, so it shows you this international dimension that we've had in VET since the very beginning. The first mobility programs in Europe started with VET in 1964 in the program of exchange of young workers. And of course, then Erasmus built on this and did it much bigger. But in fact, it's a very long tradition of more than 50 years of mobility in VET. And we will have in the next programming period, it's a big challenge precisely because of COVID, we'll have the doubling of everything we've done in the last 50 years. To put the things in perspective, in the last 50 years, we've supported the mobility of around 2 million participants in all these years. And in the next 7 years, we'll have funding for 1.9 million, so almost doubling in a very short period the opportunities for mobility. Now, the last thing I would like to say to conclude is what we are doing in terms of not only mobility, but in terms of cooperation and partnerships with the rest of the world. First of all, the coast, as you said, Margarida, it's very close to my heart. the codes have been proven to be one of the excellent forms of promoting that internationalization. Just to give you numbers, in the call we had in 2021, which closed very recently, we are now finalizing the analysis of the applications. We received 85 project applications, and they included 55 countries, so 27 EU countries, plus 28 non-European countries. So it means that the code platforms, by bringing web providers together, we are not only making the web providers in Europe work closely together, but they are opening up to the world. They're establishing partnerships with, everything from Mozambique, Cabo Verde, Argentina, China. Vocational centers are coming together to work on common challenges we have to confront the big transitions of digital and green. But I think the codes are an excellent platform that shows that there is an appetite out there, not only for European web providers to work together, but also to work with the rest of the world. The last thing I wanted to say is that there's another novelty of Erasmus Plus, which for the first time we had this year, which is an action on capacity building for web international cooperation. It's the first time we had it. In higher education, they've also had it. We'll have 26 million euros in 2022, and in the next 7 years, we'll have something like 160 million euros, which has to do not with codes, but with cooperation between web providers in Europe and web providers anywhere in the world. So it doesn't follow the structure of the code. It can be on anything, well, not anything, because we say in the code what are the areas, but it's much more flexible in that sense. And once again, it shows the way that Europe sees its role in the world of learning from each other and also supporting with the expertise we have in Europe all the web providers throughout the world that want to develop this system. So Margarida, a little bit long, but I think that I had much more to tell you, but I've tried to summarize it as best I could. Thank you.
We'll invite you to the next event. Only 1 hour for you because you have a lot of things.
Yeah, I can do it.
This is something that we like, and myself, we only have 5 minutes, no more, because they just gave me 3 minutes more. We just, I came also from the public authorities in Portugal. I was a civil servant from the Ministry of Labor, always dealing with skills and always dealing with. I was responsible for the national certification system of skills at the time, more than 25 years ago. And it's amazing that things are changed, but still, and we are always telling that, and I'm sorry, as the national authorities, we are always telling as web providers that the innovation that is being carried on at EU level concerning encouraging best practice, concerning going further, are so much more innovative that what we are doing at our member state level, at the system level. But in one hand, we have this. In another hand, we know that Europe is not giving us the right answers, including what Mr. Spiros mentioned concerning the certification. I mean, having a European branding, having a European area, also concerning these possibilities of having a unique branding and certification system. On the other hand, we'd like to have at European, at member states level, a kind of a concept of democratization of skills. When we are talking about these new pillars, 4.0, digital skills, and it's not only the basic, it's democratizing skills at different levels of qualifications. We are talking about CVET, not only on green skills, but also in digital skills. So I will ask Loukas Zahilas to go back on this subject concerning, is still there a possibility on the next couple of years to think about having a common area of EU certification and have our, or European branding on having our Europe stronger? And then go back to Mr. Spiros asking if, what are we doing concerning, what are you doing and all your team concerning this speeding up of these transversal, actually there are transversal skills nowadays, 4.0 and green skills in order to catch the train and be more. adapted to the business needs.
I will be fast, Margarida. First of all,
no, don't say no.
no, I will be.
Let's hope.
I will say yes. Let's hope. I want to be honest. European cooperation has not simple answers, and we know from the experience of the past that you cannot impose a common system. You can impose the same principles because everybody will agree on them, and perhaps we will have processes that will facilitate the way that skills or qualifications are recognized over Europe. We have made already a big step, and this big step is the European Qualifications Framework. I think it's the only tool that we can claim that at least was implemented European-wide. And so this is actually something we can build upon, because the full implementation of EQF foresees also the existence of possibilities for validating non-formal or informal learning and having all these type of processes. If you remember, we had also a sad story, the ECVET, that although it started brilliantly, at the very end, it was a failure. So I want to be optimistic. I believe that we will end up to a common way of understanding in this area. It cannot be that simple to have one body, let's say, responsible for everything, but I think we can have the common language. It will be in front of us in a few years. I don't know if they will be 2 or more.
But maybe.
Yes.
We're very hopeful, so do I. So thank you, Loukas. Mr. Spiros, what are you doing? What is your team doing concerning this need of speeding up all this
other than the
centric approach? I hope. Not
other than the fact that I'm in two teleconferences simultaneously, and I'm trying to read emails as they're coming in from the minister, I don't have anything. No, I'm joking. Look,
we are almost upping, so we changed.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the skills that people are going to have to learn, which is multitasking. I think that's one of the things everybody's going to have to learn as they want to enter the labor market. I'll agree with everything that has been said. I think, nothing is going to happen overnight. I think significant steps are being taken. And this month, we are going to adopt as OAEV the ESCO system, the European Skills, Competences, Qualifications, and Occupations. I know already 13 countries, I think approximately, have already adopted and implemented the system, which shows you that there is room, I think, for cooperation, agreement, and mutual adoption of common frameworks. And I don't know. I'm of the opinion that, the same way we were able to figure out systems for rating energy savings and applying them in all of Europe and for doing a number of other things, we need to move as fast as possible in that direction when it comes to credentials. And I think it's important for labor market mobility in the European Union. I think it's very important for employers. And let's face it, and my father worked for the same employer for 40 years. That's not going to happen anymore. I mean, you're not going to have these, typical, I go to high school, I go to college, I get a job, and 40 years later, I'm retiring. That's the end of that. The same way that the model, I graduate from college or vet, and I don't step my foot in a classroom again till the end of my career, that's dead. We're always going to have to constantly upskill ourselves and learn new things. And so when you have these new demands, old systems don't work anymore. I mean, let's face it. We've built systems for a different economy and a different society, and they simply are not up to speed anymore. And I think a lot of people in the education ecosystem understand that, but I don't think policymakers have really grasped the enormous changes that are occurring now and are going to happen in the immediate future. They're going to require systems that are much more nimble, much more adaptable, much more flexible. And the key is no longer going to be the system. The key is going to be what the economy needs and what technology is doing in society and in the economy. So I think that we're in this period where people are slowly, realizing that there are going to be these huge tectonic shifts in the education and skill systems of the countries. And the sooner we get comfortable with that idea and we're ready to make some big decisions about changes, the better off we're going to be. It's either going to be gradual and smooth, or we're going to have these very big and abrupt changes that are going to come from exogenous factors. So anyway, I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I'm not sure I'm adding much value to the conversation. I'm really just sharing, I think, a lot of the thoughts that all of us are sort of coping with as we try to navigate this new landscape that we're all in, and that is unpredictable, really, in many ways. As somebody, one of the statistics everybody says is the 10 hottest jobs of 2030 doesn't even exist anymore. How many times have we heard that, right? Well, I'm not sure that's the case, but it looks highly likely that it's somewhere around that ballpark. And things are happening super fast. Digital marketing, which is a huge demand in Greece, and I'm assuming is in other countries as well, wasn't even a specialization 10 years ago. There wasn't such a thing as digital marketing specifically. It was marketing. Now you have whole systems built around just social media and just marketing on social media. So anyway, thank you for the invitation. I think this was a helpful discussion, and it's an ongoing discussion that doesn't end. And that's what education was all about at the end of the day. So I guess we're in the right place for that.
Thank you, Mr. Spiros. Thank you for your inspiring and provoking words as well. So we are on the right track to go very faster, so much more faster. 22 it will be even worse. I will say even better. And special concerning these recovering plans that we are carrying on in all countries. And one of them very focused on 4.0, and other ones are very focused on green skills. And believe me that at member states level, and I can give you some examples. In Portugal, I'm very attached to that, and I'm very committed to that. We are creating national academies, cluster, very focused on some sectors. And we cannot wait for the national authorities to change their programs and so on. So we are creating certifications for hydrogen, for lithium, because we need that at European level. And we are working with each other, with Italy, with business, with academia. We are working together. So, and this is how we love to work, is to have the national authorities working together. And this year, my dear friends, this is the good news. We need to speed up more these learning things, not to be focused maybe not on jobs, and you heard all of you told about this, but more on skills, not on jobs and job functions, but more on a set of skills. That's why upskilling is very important, and we need to be stronger on this challenge, and those are really the challenge. So thank you, my friends, for being here. Mr. Spiros, I will really continue this conversation afterwards. I think Theodore Grassas will organize something, because we are exactly on the same member state level and operational level, having with these friends. So now we don't have questions, or I don't think we have questions. We are a little bit behind the schedule, so I have some remarks from our team in EVB, our team from Brussels. I will give the floor to Marcos, because now we are supposed to go to the World Cafe. Some of these issues and important topics that already mentioned here will continue on the World Cafe under this best practice and reflecting on the way forward. So I invite you all to go there. This is we need to have breakout rooms, and Marcos will give some instructions about that. So thank you. It was a pleasure. We'll see you next time, hopefully on site, because we need it. Human-centric approach and Latin, hands-on. Okay,
Bye.
thank you.